You know, most people assume that being an attractive woman is some sort of golden ticket. Like life is easier, doors open magically, and the world just bends in your favor. And sure, on the surface, there are privileges that come with physical beauty. But no one talks about the price that comes with it, especially when it comes to the constant objectification and the kind of attention that doesn't feel like a compliment. It feels like a cage. Because what happens when you're seen as beautiful? You're seen constantly. And not for your soul, your ideas, your spirit, but for the way you look. You walk down the street and you can feel it. The eyes, the comments, the whispers that aren't even whispers. It's not admiration, it's consumption. And it chips away at your sense of safety, your sense of peace. You start to question whether you can just be without being watched, evaluated, or fantasized about. Now imagine living your whole life like that. From your teenage years onward, you're navigating the world not just as a human being, but as a target. You're taught to be polite, to smile when someone says something inappropriate, to laugh it off when a comment crosses the line. Because speaking up makes you dramatic, cold, or full of yourself. You're constantly managing how to protect yourself without offending anyone. Because we've all been taught that our safety is often tied to how well we can make others feel comfortable, even when we feel deeply uncomfortable. But here's the kicker. This constant stream of attention doesn't make you feel more valuable. It makes you feel invisible in the ways that matter. People don't ask what you think, they assume. They don't ask what you feel, they assume. And that assumption is based on nothing more than how you look. It's exhausting, it's dehumanizing, and worst of all, it's expected that you should be grateful for it. I've met women, powerful, brilliant women, who have mastered the art of walking into a room and dimming their light just enough so they don't draw the kind of attention that comes with a cost. They dress differently, avoid eye contact, they soften their posture, not because they want to, but because somewhere along the line they learned that being beautiful and visible means being vulnerable to the wrong kind of energy. And when they do express boundaries, when they do speak up, they're labeled as arrogant or ungrateful. Because how dare someone who has something the world deems valuable set a limit on how it's accessed? And this isn't just happening in dark alleys or in shady clubs. This happens in offices, in boardrooms, in classrooms. A comment, a look, a joke that tells you, you're not really here for your ideas, you're here for decoration. And if you reject that role, suddenly you're difficult, uncooperative, unfriendly. So let's be honest, it's not a blessing to be reduced to your appearance, no matter how beautiful you are. It's not a privilege to have your identity swallowed up by your looks. It's a silent, constant battle for ownership over your own presence. And it's time we stop pretending that this kind of attention is harmless. Because attention without respect isn't flattery, it's control. Now here's something that really doesn't get talked about enough. What it really feels like to be an attractive woman who's also smart, capable, driven. Because there's this quiet, infuriating truth. When you're beautiful, people often assume that's all you are. You walk into a meeting with solid ideas, real strategy, years of experience under your belt, and somehow the conversation still circles back to your looks. Someone compliments your outfit a little too long before they ask about your credentials. Or worse, they assume you're only in the room because of how you look, as if your mind didn't earn you the seat. And after a while, it gets to you. You start second-guessing your own voice, not because you doubt your intelligence, but because you're tired of having to prove it every single time. It's a strange, maddening thing when your appearance becomes a distraction from your own value. You could be speaking facts, presenting a solution, offering leadership, and someone's still caught up in the idea of who they think you are based on your face, your body, your presence. That kind of misjudgment is subtle, but it's everywhere. And the worst part is, it's dressed up as praise. You're too pretty to be doing this kind of work, they say with a smile, like it's some kind of compliment. It's not. It's a limitation wearing a mask. Now think about the impact of that over time. You start noticing the pattern. You share an idea, and it gets ignored. until a man says the same thing 5 minutes later, and suddenly, it's brilliant. You apply for leadership roles and get overlooked because they say you lack the experience while promoting someone else with less. But he looks the part they're comfortable with. You work twice as hard, stay twice as late, and still get questions like, "So, who helped you with this?" Or, "Are you really interested in this field?" There are women who've built companies, mastered complex sciences, led movements, and yet they still get reduced to their appearance in interviews, headlines, and even day-to-day interactions. It's a constant battle to reclaim their voice from the assumptions people bring with them. And if they dare to confront that bias, if they push back, they're called difficult, too sensitive, or worse, accused of using their looks to manipulate outcomes. There's no winning in that box. So what do? What do you do when the world sees you as a pretty face before it ever sees your brain? You work anyway. You keep showing up. You speak louder. You let your results speak, even when the room refuses to listen. But let's be real, that takes an emotional toll. Carrying the weight of everyone else's assumptions on your back while trying to stay focused on your goals, it's heavy. And it's not just about work either. It happens in school, in relationships, in everyday conversation. You want to talk politics, science, philosophy, and people look surprised. Like your beauty somehow cancels out your curiosity. As if the two can't coexist. But they do. And they always have. People just refuse to see it. So here's the truth. Being underestimated doesn't mean you're less. It means the world still has a lot of growing up to do. But you don't shrink to make it comfortable. You rise and let that be your power. Let's talk about something a little more hidden. Something that creeps in silently when you least expect it. The isolation. Because for a lot of attractive women, the dark side isn't just about the outside noise, the stares, the assumptions, the objectification. It's also about what happens in your relationships, the friendships that fade, the side eyes, the quiet judgment, the distance, the loneliness that nobody thinks you're allowed to feel because the world assumes you have everything. You'd be surprised how often beauty becomes a barrier, not a bridge. People think it draws others in, and sure, sometimes it does, but it can also push people away, especially women who feel threatened, or men who can't see past it. You walk into a room, and you're instantly categorized. People assume you're arrogant, shallow, manipulative, before you've even opened your mouth. And if you're kind, it's fake. If you're confident, it's threatening. If you're reserved, you're cold. It feels like you can't win, no matter what energy you bring. And so what happens? You start to feel like you have to downplay yourself just to feel safe in a conversation. You tone down your confidence, your joy, your success, just to avoid the tension. You hide your shine, not because you want to, but because you're tired of the way people flinch when you show it. It's like they expect you to apologize for how you look. Apologize for being comfortable in your own skin. And when you don't, when you just own your space, unapologetically, people call it vanity or ego. But all you're really doing is existing, being yourself. Now think about how that plays out over time. You start noticing how certain friends disappear after you get attention in public, or how they become distant after you post a photo where you look too good. You see how trust breaks down, not because of anything you did, but because of someone else's insecurity or fear. And that's what makes it so painful. Because you're not doing anything wrong, you're just being. But somehow, that's too much for some people. And it's not just friendships, it's dating too. You meet someone, and they're drawn to your looks at first, but then they start projecting their fears onto you, accusing you of seeking attention, watching your every move like you're going to betray them at any moment. They treat you like a trophy they have to guard, not a human being they want to understand. And when that insecurity creeps in, it poisons everything. Suddenly, you're not a partner, you're a threat. Not because of your actions, but because of the story they've written in their head about who you must be. So you start questioning yourself. You wonder who really wants to know you, not the version of you they've created. You crave depth, connection, real friendship, honest love. But that's hard to find when people keep reacting to your appearance instead of relating to your soul. And the irony? The world assumes you have people lining up to know you. But in reality, you can feel completely alone in a crowded room. Here's the truth most people won't admit. Beauty can be isolating, not because of the mirror, but because of how the world responds to it. And when that response is rooted in envy, judgment, or projection, it creates walls instead of bridges. And when you live behind those walls long enough, it can feel like no one sees the real you. But even in that silence, in that space of being misunderstood, you have power. Because the most dangerous thing a beautiful woman can do is love herself deeply when the world only wants her to be surface level.